Yeah, just a little cold today. In the teens, maybe in the single digits. Hey, this is Andrew Bocher with GY6 Outdoors, back again with the follow-up review of the iKamper X-Cover rooftop tent. I don't have this tent open right now because I can't open it. I have put this through damn near every situation you can think of, every weather situation you can think of, and I have a lot of pros and a lot of cons that you might want to stick around to find out. So this is an expensive rooftop tent. It's not cheap by any means, but you know, I'm a firm believer in you buy once, cry once, and a lot of the times you get what you pay for. This video is not intended to be a bash video. I'm not trying to bash iKamper, but I am always gonna tell you guys the pros and the cons when I review a product, whether I get that product in for free, like I did with this rooftop tent. They sent it my way to review it, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I didn't pay a single penny for it. And I'm happy I didn't. But I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. I have slept out of this rooftop tent probably over 200 times in the last year and a half. That is a whole lot more often than many people will ever use a rooftop tent. A lot of people buy a rooftop tent, they slap it on their vehicle, and they use it maybe 3 or 4 weekends out of the year. I personally think that you should never spend this amount of money on a rooftop tent if you're not gonna use it quite often, because you wanna kind of get your bang for your buck. For me, 200 times probably and then some in the last year and a half, because I've been on the go, I've been filming a lot, I've been traveling a lot, I've been hunting a lot. I've gotten rid of my house and I've actually moved completely off grid, as you can tell by the RV behind me. There obviously has been a video already about me discussing that and talking about the reasons for it and why I'm moving forward in that direction for the foreseeable future. You can click right here or in the description for that video. I consider sleeping out of a rooftop tent, especially one like this with a king-size NovaFoam mattress and everything else, luxury outdoor camping. It's far from roughing it, but you're paying a pretty dollar for it, so you should be getting that aspect. You should be getting a little bit more luxury and a little bit more comfort. You're off the ground. You know, a lot of things should come from that expense. I don't have this tent open right now because I can't open it. There's a lot of pros and cons that I'm going to get into here in a second, but the main one, or one of the main ones, is the fact that this is a obviously rooftop tent. It collapses on itself. It has a zipper around the outside. If you want to know all the nitty-gritty details about how it's supposed to function and what it has in it, the material being used, you can watch the original full review of it. It'll have all those details. Links in the description, or you can click right here. A few weeks back, I've been in really cold temperatures for pretty much the last 3 or 4 weeks consistently, and I had just the truck, just a rooftop tent. I was hunting in a very rural, frozen tundra of Wyoming. It got down into the negative temperatures. It snowed like crazy. The tent got wet, and I had no other option but to obviously close it when the blizzard was happening to get back on the road. So when you miscalculate the weather and you wake up the next morning and it's a blizzard and everything you worked hard on is frozen solid, covered in snow, which I didn't want because I want it dry and not wet. That's important to stay. This is on the other side of the truck. At least I have a windbreak. Man. I think it's down to, woo! Woo! Yeah! All right. If you're gonna do it. If you're gonna do it right. Nice and cold and frozen. So that should last quite a bit of time. So long story short, collapsing this tent when it's frozen solid is a bitch. And the zipper system is a nightmare when snow is packed into the little crevices and frozen. You have to break it free, and you're afraid to pull too hard, because if you break the zipper, you're up that creek without that paddle. And I finally got it attached, and now I'm gonna start working away and chiseling off each spot to get it all the way around. But the tent is covered in snow, and when you close the tent up, hopefully I'm not yelling at you guys. The wind is super high wind right now. Look at all that. If you want to see pictures of my hunting stuff, it's going to be over on Instagram. It's going to be on Instagram because I don't post hunting stuff on this channel due to YouTube getting a little upset when I showed the scary process on how I get the groceries. You close a tent, there's nothing you can do but close it up with all the snow or water or whatever the elements are at the time. You gotta just remember to open it back up and let it dry out. But putting it to the test, I told you guys I would. It was cold last night in the tent, that's for sure. If I didn't have my little electric heater with me, it would have been freezing. There's little gaps in this tent that are not meant for extreme cold. A lot of my gear wet. It got the bed wet, my bedding wet, my sleeping bag wet, and it's just a little hole like this on either side where the hinge is and also where the zipper's at. Okay, I'm gonna go continue with this full review. I'm not sure when the review will be done, but it's been about a year and 3 months, 4 months, something like that. All right, later. Now, when you close a rooftop tent, you're obviously closing in all that moisture, and it's been in the negative temperatures and low teens a lot, and it has frozen the tent in place. So I can't have it open for today's video, and I wanted it to be kind of like that. I didn't want to wait for a perfect day to have it open. I wanted you to see one of the issues about a folding rooftop tent. And it's not just saying iKamper. This could have happened with any folding rooftop tent or packable rooftop tent. If it gets wet and it gets below freezing, you may have a frozen situation. You may have to bang off some ice. It may get a little troublesome for you. So keep that in mind. This is not a knock on just the iKamper X cover. That's on most likely any rooftop tent that you have to collapse on itself if it becomes wet and you stay in freezing temperatures. There's gonna be a lot of talking in this video, a lot of pros and cons, so buckle up. I just wanna give you all the information because this is a big investment and you need to know what you're getting before you invest into it. I was a little bummed out. I did receive this tent free of charge from iKamper. They sent it my way and I was very much appreciative of it. I did the video, I did it to the highest quality I possibly could, gave all the true specs, didn't pull any punches and didn't withhold any glory from it either. That's always my basis. If I get something in for free, I review it fully and there's never a pulled punch. My opinion and my honesty to you guys is worth everything. I will never sell it for any amount of money. Well, maybe $1 billion or a couple million. Maybe I might go become a talking head for that. Let's just be honest. Everyone's got their price, but that's never going to be the situation. I don't think I'll ever be offered that amount of money. And if I do, I'll just let you know I'm a talking head for that company now. I'm never going to pull any punches with a review. That's what I do this for. It's GY6, Got Your 6, to have your back with product reviews. With my firearms channel, with the outdoor channel now, I'm reviewing products and saving you time and headache because I've been there. I've been the guy with all the worst crap on a camping trip, backpacking trip, hunting trip, and I've been made fun of. I've been laughed at. I've had the fingers pointed at me going, haha, you loser. I didn't have the money at the time to buy high-end stuff, so I got stuck buying mediocre, low-quality things, and they ended up acting like mediocre, low-quality things, and I got stuck up that particular creek without that particular paddle, and it was very annoying. So this channel, my gun channel, it's all based on reviewing gear and giving you guys the honest opinion and showing you what it is without any pulled punches, no matter what. So tent was sent out. I appreciate it. Awesome, but it doesn't change the fact I need to tell you guys the pros and the cons, no matter what. I contacted iKamper. I let them know the situations that were happening. I've had some major problems over the last year and a half with it. Some pretty bad situations and pretty frustrating and very, I don't know, I guess I was very angry situations about how the tent performed in certain situations. And I was very upset with how iKamper responded. Now, most likely iKamper's watching this and they're gonna be pretty pissed off, but I know what, I don't care. I contacted them the best I possibly could. I talked to a few people that work for them that are now stateside, and they pretty much told me, don't do that follow-up review. And I said, sorry, I'm going to do it. It's kind of what I do. They offered to send me another tent, not one like this, but a new version, and the new one's coming out and say, hey, no, just review the new stuff. Don't give us the follow-up review. And I said, well, that's not how I work. I need to do a follow-up review because I promised the viewers I would. And they said, well, for one, the cons you find out aren't going to be viable because it's a prototype. And I instantly went, well, has any of the material changed? They said, no. Has any of the stuff changed on the tent whatsoever that makes it function? No. Have there been things added to it in the newer version? Yeah, they've added a new crossbeam in the middle, so it gives you more of a dome, helps for more runoff, and that does negate one of the cons that are coming up. They have updated some of the side awning windows, but overall the performance, the materials used, the items used to make the tent, the shape, the look, the overall function hasn't changed at all. There's just been some upgrades, but that doesn't negate the cons that are coming from this tent, because the ones that come from this tent will come from the new tent, whether they have a new bar or new awnings or not, because it's the same material and the same function. They haven't given me just a piece of crap made out of cardboard. This is their tent. It's just the prototype version when they sent it out to me for the review. They wanted me to do a follow-up review on another tent, or a review of another one of their tents. And I said, fine, I'm down. I love your products, but there are pros and cons with damn near everything. And I'm going to state the cons just as much as the pros. They said, well, we'll send you a new tent to review, but sign this contract. And they gave me this contract that stated that I had to say all these positive things and say all these things in a very commercial-like fashion, or else they wouldn't send me the tent. So I said no, clearly to that. And I think they were a little frustrated. I know that there's certain reviews that are coming out now of their newer tents, and that means some of these reviewers are signing that contract to state certain positive things when they don't even know how it functions yet. I've put this thing through a year and a half of pretty hardcore treatment just to see how it would handle certain situations, and I got the feedback that I'm giving to you now. But other reviewers are signing these contracts, and it frustrates me because you have to say certain things. You got to put out this talking head, commercialized way of reviewing a tent. As much as I would love to get another one of their tents in to review it, because I think they're coming out with some phenomenal things, I don't know what they are going to be though until I review them, so I can't say they're phenomenal, but they do look phenomenal. I would love to review them, but I'm most likely just gonna have to buy them myself and put my hard-earned money into that to get the tent in and review it. And if it's crap, sell it. I don't know. We'll see. But that's where Patreon comes in. Thank you for those who have jumped on board with patreon.com/GY6outdoors. Very little people on there actually supporting, but eventually it'll become viable and it'll allow me to put that funding into buying other rooftop tents and other expensive outdoor items. That way I don't ever have to deal with the whole contract-based bullshit that ends up making people a talking head. I don't want to review just a $20 item. I want to review the stuff that most of you look into reviews for, because you don't want to waste money on something that doesn't work. So I'm going to jump back and forth with a lot of video clips from over the last year and a half of me in certain situations. I've had it in extreme heat, over 110 degrees. I've had it in high winds, low winds, extremely cold situations with -5 to -10 degrees, extreme blizzards, rain, snow, sleet, hail, what's another name for weather? Name it, I've been through it in this tent, and I've had to deal with some pretty serious situations. So when I first saw this rooftop tent, I was told by iKamper, good to go. They sent it out, I reviewed it, and they never said anything of like, don't go into this situation, don't go in this weather, don't do these things. They never told me that. Well, after I contacted them and let them know about a lot of the failures this tent had with the overall testing process of it over the last year and a half, they said, well, it's not going to do well in that situation because it's not designed for it. And I'm like, okay, that's fair, but why is that not in the description on your website when you're selling it to people? This should state, do not take it into high winds, do not take it into extreme colds, do not take it into extreme wet weather, do not take it into extreme windy conditions, snowy conditions, any extreme outdoor conditions whatsoever, because you're most likely going to have some issues. And I know that for a fact because I've been in all those situations. And their response was less than ideal. You know, they kind of directed me to another one of their tents that would be better for extreme situations. I'm like, why didn't you tell me that in the first place, when I can contact my followers and let them know, hey, this is not meant for that? Well, now I know, and I'm telling you now. I know this is all over the place, but there's a lot to unpack here over the last year and a half. And for those who really cared, this is going to be viable. And I'm sorry for the ranting and sorry for the extreme amount of talking, but it's a year and a half of built up frustrations and positive things that I want to just unload. So deal with it. Extreme weather. This is an aluminum frame with a tent on it. So remember that. So when extreme cold happens, that aluminum frame absorbs that cold and you feel it through your mattress. It is cold. There's a 2.5, 3-inch NovaFoam mattress inside of it, but that does not block out the cold. When you're on a ground tent, you are insulating yourself with the ground. At first it's cold, but your body starts soaking into the surrounding dirt and you start getting an insulated base plus with a good 4-season mat, and Four Seasons sleeping pad, you are toasty warm. With this, not so much. Yes, the mattress is comfortable. Yes, it's phenomenal to sleep on. I love the way it feels. I love the room I have, but it's not meant to insulate you in negative temperatures, or even in the teens, or even in just before freezing temperatures. You feel it. Not to mention the fact that the surrounding tent itself is cold. There's a lot of vents that open up. There are little side holes that are all around the tent, and that lets in a draft, it lets in cold, it lets out heat. And all night long, that takes its toll. So keep that in mind. Also with those holes, they are a point of ingress for weather, rain and snow. I've had rain blowing sideways, and it goes under, because as the wind's blowing, the wind blows the rain fly up, and it allows the wind to go under that rain fly and bringing the rain with it, and then the rain comes into your tent and starts dripping through seams. Also with snow, same thing, blows the snow underneath, snow settles onto the main part of the tent. As that melts in the hotter points of the day, that drips into your tent and onto your gear. Also, the wind blows rain and snow into those holes. I have had situations where the rain comes flying into those holes and soaks the sides of your sleeping bag or blankets or pillow, and it causes some issues. It's very uncomfortable to be in that situation, especially when it gets cold. And then snow. I've had snow come in through those holes actually quite recently, and last year as well, where the wind was blowing snow so hard, it was blowing snow into those holes and making a little snowdrift inside my tent. Now, a lot of the shots I'm showing you with the B-roll are filmed with a cell phone, so I do apologize for the quality and the noise, but it is what it is. It's a good way of capturing it in the moment. And that snow built up, and it would melt during the day. As much as I try to get it out of the tent, it would still be there. It would melt during the day or while I'm sleeping a little bit because of my ambient heat, and that would melt onto the gear as well. And you wake up to cold clothes and wet clothes. Frustrating and uncomfortable to say the least. On top of that, wind in general. The wind with this tent is horrendous. When the wind hits this tent, it's this weird sound of air coming in and out of the tent that's like a very loud thumping sound, and the whipping of the rain fly, because it's not fully taut on all fronts. When the wind really picks up, it makes a tremendous amount of sound. I've been in tents all my life, and this is by far the loudest tent I've ever been in. And yeah, makes it very hard to sleep, period. Also, the zippers inside, if you buy this tent, whether you're planning on taking it in extreme conditions or not, which I don't recommend, but if you do, or just in regular conditions, I recommend taking the zippers and putting some sort of masking tape or electrical tape or some sort of kind of padded tape around each zipper, because when the zippers come together, when you finally close everything off, they go ting, 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 all through the night on all the zippers around the tent, and there's a lot of them on this tent. The tent itself is designed to work with the ladder, okay? So the ladder that's inside here now, which usually is in there, but I can't put it in there because it broke. The ladder attaches to the rooftop here, and you use it to pry the rooftop tent open. Now, in my original review, I didn't use it like that because I was afraid of putting too much tension on that ladder. And even iKamper was like, well, you're gonna be fine. Just use it how we stated and pry it open, it'll be fine. Well, I was all right, well, going off their recommendation, I decided to do that. I took the ladder a few times, and after probably 20, 30 times, 40 times using it that way, I heard a ping, and I instantly was worried because I'm like, that's not a good sound with anything mechanical. When that sound happened, I saw a spring go flying and a piece of plastic go flying, and it was one of the little rung latches that are on the ladder that usually allow you to open and close the ladder and hold it in place. It exploded, sent a spring flying, which I never found, and then the plastic cap, which I did find, and I couldn't put it back together even if I wanted to. I was like, wow, if I find this spring, I can put it all back together. No, it explodes inside the ladder, nothing you can fix. So now I've been stuck with a ladder that I cannot fully collapse, and so therefore it cannot fit into the rooftop tent like I usually would, so now it has to stay in the back of the truck, which I then have to protect it from things bashing into it and things causing it harm because I don't want to further damage the ladder. Without the ladder, the rooftop tent doesn't work. Keep that in mind. So when you attach the ladder, it's opposing base that holds your weight up there. Without it, you're putting an extreme amount of pressure on the frame itself, and that can cause long-term problems. If you're a lightweight person, you might be able to get away with it. Me personally, I could not. So keep that in mind. The ladder is, I'm afraid the next one that's going to break is going to be on another section of the ladder, and it'll be further stuck at an extended point. And I think over time that might happen to quite a few of those little clips, and you'll be stuck with a fully extended ladder that's going to have to stick out the back of your truck in order to use the rooftop tent. Please keep that in mind. Pay attention to the ladder if you have it. Be careful with it. If you can, get up and open it manually. Don't use the ladder as a pry bar. I thought it was a bad idea to start with, and it shows its face to be true. If your ladder breaks, it starts causing major issues. Also, you can't get into your tent. Please remember that. You can pull some sort of Sylvester Stallone cliffhanger move and try to and like throw yourself into it somehow. I personally can't, and I don't want to because I'm 230 pounds and I'm afraid to really cause some damage to this thing. So the ladder, you got to be careful with it. That's one of the foundational things that makes this tent work. They should have made that thing rock solid. The material used on the tent, it's fantastic. It's very high grade. The seams are fantastic. Seams are sewn on this tent very well. The seams aren't leaking per se, but the way the tent is set up with the awnings, if you don't have the awnings fully extended and have the poles in them, your awning lays on the tent, and when it rains, the rain goes off that awning and onto your tent rather than off your tent. And so it piles up inside the unzipped outer shell, and it gets funneled over the zippers because the rain fly doesn't hang low enough to hang off of the tent. It hangs onto the tent when it's not fully extended like an awning. I hope that makes sense. I would open this and show you, but it's frozen solid. Give you a situation. It's raining, you get to your destination. You can't control the weather, but you need to sleep. So you get out of your truck. This may or may not be an exact situation that I went through. So you get out of your truck saying, I need to get my tent up. I need to get some rest to get back on the road tomorrow. So you open your tent. Everything starts getting wet, but eventually, boom, everything's open. You're good. You start throwing your gear into your tent. You don't have time because of how much rain is coming down. It's downpouring. You don't want to stick your head out of the tent for the next 5 minutes trying to put on all these awning poles and find the little tiny hole that it fits into to make the awnings be in position the way they should to disperse the rain in the direction they need to be dispersed so it doesn't go onto your tent. So you go, forget it. It's still a rain fly. It'll be waterproof and it'll take the rain off the tent for the most part. So you don't put out the awnings. Well, in the middle of the night, you feel raindrops hitting you in the face. So water's hitting me in the face. I found out that rain fly, unless you have the awnings completely out, is dripping water off the rain fly onto the parts of the tent that aren't exactly waterproof, especially the zipper. So the zipper is absorbing this water and it's funneling it into my tent. By the time I realize this, I wake up, turn on the lamp. It's cold, it's wet, it's rainy, it's windy, it's loud. I'm not sleeping very well. Now I'm wet. Now I look at the bed. The bed is soaked. My bedding is soaked. My sleeping bag on the bottom side is soaked. My pillow on the back side is soaked from the water running underneath of it. My clothes that I'm going to put on in the morning are soaked. So long story short, be very careful on where you go and when you go to certain places and what weather you're in with this rooftop tent, because if you don't put out all the awnings, you're not getting the full performance of the tent. And I expected that, but I thought it was going to be more of a comfort thing, as in I can't see out the windows. I can't easily get in and out without the awning and rainfly slapping me in the face. I'm okay with that. But the fact that the rainfly only sits so far when you don't have them deployed funnels water into your tent. Not fun. So if you're in rain, make sure to put out those awnings. That's partially my fault, partially a design flaw. It's not exactly how they intended the tent to be used, but it should be a warning. In rain, make sure to put out your awnings. Also the noise. When your awnings aren't out, the rain fly is just whoop-ah, 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 and it's just slapping the hell out of the top of your tent, and it's even more loud than it is when you have the awnings out. That being said, when you have your awnings deployed, you have now turned your rooftop tent into a boat sail. Here's another fun thing. On windy days, if you don't have a ton of weight in the rooftop tent, when the wind picks up, you come back to your tent, it looks like that. It used to be down, and everything that's inside of it right now, this exact same thing happened yesterday, last evening when I got back to the truck. And everything inside is smashed together, and I had a few broken things and a bunch of spilt waters, and yeah, great. Time to clean it up again. Oh, and then the mattress itself sticks out from the bottom, and then all day yesterday when it was raining, rain was getting all over my bed sheets, which was what you see right there is the white. It was fun sleeping in the cold, wet environment. To close it up, it's pretty much drained out now, but that's the mattress you sleep on, and those are my sheets that are on the bed. And unless you knock off all the rain on the outside, it accumulates in certain spots, and then when you go to fold it up, it drains onto the mattress, which then seals up inside of it and can cause mildew if you don't open up and dry it out soon enough. Or if you open it up soon enough and have to sleep on it again that night or the next night, you have wet bedding. So it's not ideal. Please keep that in mind. I was in, where was I? It was over a year ago. I was in Utah, and I was in near the Canyonlands National Park. Very windy areas certain parts of the year. And the wind picked up. I had not only the tent out, but also the Annex room. The Annex room is an attachment that goes onto the rooftop tent. If you haven't seen that video yet of that review, I did it right after the iKamper tent review. You can click in the description or right here on the screen. That Annex room is awesome. It zips onto the awning and it goes out and gives you a little living room space, and it protects you from the elements for the most part. Well, I had that deployed, and in the Annex room I had a table, I had my coffee, and I had breakfast and my stove and food, not to mention a bunch of my clothes and gear that I had hung up on different parts of the tent in the Annex room to get ready for the next morning for more filming and more exploring. Well, the wind picked up in the middle of the morning, and I was literally in my skivvies. I'm in my underwear, drinking coffee, finishing my breakfast real fast, and the wind picks up, and I see the Annex room starting to move a lot. The funny thing is, this is really taut, and the wind is still whipping against this thing. Like, you can see me push against it. Yeah, but cooking up some breakfast and about to make some coffee. This little heater is worth its weight in gold, especially when you're in your skivvies. So it's nice. Now, granted, I have it fully guy lined out, fully staked out, and I have bags on the outside holding the bottom perimeter of the Annex room even more taut. Well, the wind picks up and it starts whipping the Annex room around. It starts moving, and as it starts moving, it starts pulling. And as it starts pulling, the stakes get a little bit loose. So I try to get out and I try to hammer the stakes back down, but it's almost like whack-a-mole. When you get one down, another one pops up. I spent 15, 20 minutes trying to keep that thing down, and the wind just was relentless. Continued to hammer the Annex room. I'm in there drinking my coffee going, son of a gun. Well, hopefully it holds. As I'm thinking that, whew, the whole Annex room just gets sucked off of the tent, rips one of the buckles that attaches to the awning, unzips it, I hear a tearing sound, and completely pulls it off of its anchor points of the stakes. The guy lines come flying out. I am now standing in the middle of nowhere in Utah in a windstorm, getting sandblasted with the wind, in my underwear holding a cup of coffee. I hope you have an image in your head, because it was just as hilarious in the moment as you are thinking of it right now. All of this was covered, and then this whole thing unzipped and I couldn't even be mad. It was like a Looney Tunes situation. I was laughing so hard. And I spent the next hour collecting all my stuff, getting all my gear, which has now been thrown out into God's green creation all over the place, blown far, far away from where I'm at. My clothes were everywhere. My food was everywhere. Everything was now coated in sand because it's very sandy there and the wind was high. So it was like a dust storm with, being a windstorm. It sucked. So now I'm coated, my gear's coated, all my food now has stuff all over it. The boxes that have my food in it are getting filled with sand. Very bad situation, but it all stemmed from one of the buckles on the tent. I originally was like, damn, I just need to know not to put it in these extreme situations, but weather comes out of nowhere. So the weather's supposed to get bad and you have your stuff deployed. Buckle up, Buttercup, is this gonna get interesting? At first it was like my fault, I just need to learn not to put it out in these situations. Good to know, good for the review. But I come to find out that whole situation stemmed from one of the buckles where the annex room clips onto the tent, ripping. And that ripped buckle caused it starting to move. And then that started to unzip the annex room off of the awning. And that started to pull things. And I noticed also one of the guy line anchors on the annex room ripped off as well. Didn't come undone, didn't even pull out the stake. It ripped off the annex room, which means I lost one of my anchor points as well. And it's just started to become a snowball effect, all because of stitching issues with the clips. And I noticed more and more coming up in the next con that the clips that are on the tent that hold the rainfly on also need improvement. As the wind's whipping, it got underneath the rainfly a little bit and was pulling the rainfly to the side, which pulls the metal bar that holds the annex room or the awning out, and it bent it. It literally bent the metal rod that holds your awning out like this. Look at this thing. Yeah. Some serious winds, man, but something to keep in mind. You can bend this back, but now you know. I try to stay as level-headed as possible with my reviews. I try not to be biased, but when certain situations like this happen where it gets bad, real bad in certain situations, you need to be fully aware of these things in these reviews, and that's why I'm bringing them to you. But also being a reviewer, I can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I can't just say, what the f***? I gotta show the pros and the cons. The pros can lead to them saying what they did right, and also lead them to what they need to work on. So if iKamper is a good company, which I still think they are, they need to just be more outward about how not to use their products or what conditions not to put them in, and they need to improve on the things that reviewers like myself find. This tent, I just think, has so many issues in extreme conditions, it should just be labeled not for extreme weather conditions. Period. That's how it should be labeled, because it's not. The non-prototype one, it does have a new bar in the middle of it, so the middle of the tent is more domed. It doesn't have a settling point like this one does, which I think is awesome, because with this version, it may happen with the dome version too, I don't know, but water does whip underneath that rainfly on windy, rainy days, and it settles on the tent proper, and then will start pooling and then dripping through the zipper in that spot. The zippers seem to be a point of ingress for weather to get into the tent, so keep that in mind. Moving on to extremely hot conditions and dry weather. In the summer, I was in 110 plus degree temperatures, and not all the time, but quite often. You literally feel like you're in an easy bake oven. If you open up all the vents and you have the roof vent open and all your awnings out and the windows fully open and it's just mesh in all the window aspects, the breeze does come through and it's not as hot, but it's still pretty hot because of the color of the tent and how much that material absorbs heat from the sun. But it's not as bad with all the awnings open. But in that same element, there's so many of them, you better have your clothes on. Unless you're a nudist, you don't mind people seeing you naked, which, to each their own. But you don't have any privacy. I mean, if you're at a campground, which I don't really go to, but if you're at a campground and you have people around you, they're gonna see everything that's going on in your tent. And for me, half the things I like to use in the tent for, you want the things drawn down. And I've been in some hot situations, severe hot situations with a ground tent. And yeah, it's still hot, don't get me wrong. If you've ever been in a tent in the heat, you know that, what the hell, heat feeling in a sunny tent situation. This is far worse. Something about the thick material being used. I don't know, but it's hot. The outside skirting, this is the third one I've had, maybe the fourth. I think it might be the fourth. With the middle of the summer, this dark black becomes ashy gray, and it makes your tent look old, like very weathered old. Ugh. But on to that. I think this is one of the final cons. I'm glad you guys are still with me. The skirting goes around, and there's a zipper that's on the bottom here. That zipper goes all the way around and attaches on the front or back, depending upon how you mount it. Mine's up here. And you have to compress the tent. Oh, there's another con after this. Compress the tent, and you have to unzip it or zip it by keeping it compressed, and like you would for any zipper on a jacket or whatever. Well, the skirting, if it fails in any form, your tent cannot seal. So I've had situations where the material here that attaches to the zipper and the stitching of it ripped and caused the tent to separate from the zipper and wouldn't let me put it all back together. It happened mainly on the front where the zipper comes together and you start your zipping process to close it. And it kept ripping and ripping, and next thing you have this floppy thing you can't get a zip on, and then the buckle itself, God, I'm trying to remember all these things. The buckle itself, the zipper buckle, exploded. Trying to pull it onto the zip to get the zipper going. The buckle broke, snapped off. Now I'm left with that little nubby thing that you're trying to push with just your fingers down the zipper, and I only got a quarter of the way before my fingers almost started bleeding, and it just was so hard to get going because of the material separating. I was like, I'd rather have a little gap here and there and still have it closed. I couldn't do that, so I ended up having to put a ratchet strap around this thing here and here to hold it down just so I can get back to my house at the time. I had to wait with this technically exposed because when the wind picked up, this would be flapping, and it wasn't zipped down. It was just held down by ratchet ties, and heaven forbid, I didn't want to open it up to get all my bedding out because I already had it down at least enough. But when the weather picked up and it started raining, and the rain got into it, and it saturated my gear, and so if the skirting fails, your whole tent system goes to shit. Just remember that. All the stuff that's supposed to work properly goes to hell in a handbasket if this one aspect goes out the window. And then followed by the ladder, if that goes out the window, which it did in its own fashion. Still functions, just not as well as it should, and it eventually could get worse. I don't want to digress. So I replaced this skirting 3 or 4 times now. I think it's 4 times. You have to take this all off and pull it and stretch it, and it's a cumbersome process to get this thing on and off and put the new one back on. It's a pain, to say the least. But you finally get it back on and it zips, and I've had that happen now 3 to 4 times. Actually 3 times, because the 4th one's still holding down. Well, this one's working so far. It's only been a couple months. There's all the extra side skirting for the tent. You also can see that this is part of the lower band that runs around. This has the broken and ripped end right here that does not fit back into the zipper itself. This end has been ripped off completely on the other, starting to fray again as well. This is the 3rd one I've replaced, and 2nd or 3rd, one or the other. The first one was with the prototype, so I almost was like, okay, I'll toss that out. Maybe they've done a better job with the new skirting. They sent the new skirtings out, and 2 of the new skirtings still failed with the non-prototype. Now, one of the last things I want to discuss is the buckle. So right here, there's a buckle. When you close the tent, you first pull this down as much as you possibly can, compress it, and you snap the buckle down, and that buckle keeps it compressed enough, and you cinch it, keeps it down enough to where you can then put your zippers together. Because if you're off by just a little bit, those zippers don't come together, and you're like, you cannot get them on, and you cannot zip it closed. So you have to get that nice and tight to get the zipper to work. So you think that would be something they'd put extreme focus on to make it not only metal, maybe it is metal now, maybe it is, maybe the new one is metal, I'll give them that, maybe it is. You could use a ratchet tie and ratchet it down and then zip it and then take your ratchet tie off. That would work if that situation ever failed on you. Me, it has never failed completely yet, but it's starting. Over the last 6 months, I am not able to fully close that buckle. That buckle is starting to break on one side, and it won't let me cinch it hard. So I have to like get it going on the zipper, and then hang off this thing and pull as hard as I possibly can to get it down and cinched enough without it being too tight where it pops the buckle off. Hey, starts to come undone instantly. And if you try to tension the tent down, the whole buckle starts coming out. If I pull any harder, it'll just pop. So I have to usually stop it right there and try to push it back in, which is almost impossible because there's so much tension on the tent. But I know eventually this will be a breaking point. I mean, half the battle about a rooftop tent is quick and easy deployment of your tent and gathering your tent up and getting back on the road. So, oh, and one more con. The buckles that hold the rain fly onto the tent exploded. So over the last year and a half, I've had one buckle go, I've had a second buckle go, and a third buckle go. Put these back on once they fell off, but as you can see, it's just completely ripped off. Yeah, it's had enough tearing to where it's actually tearing the rain fly now too. So ripped off the tent, and it's ripping a hole through the rain fly. This one ripped off as well. That part, I don't know where that other buckle is on one of them, so I have 3 out of the 4. I recently had to sew my buckles back onto the tent just so I can use my rain fly. Because in the middle of the night, it was raining, middle of the night, cold. Please put that in your mind. All I hear is woof, 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 woof. And I'm like, what in God's name is happening now? Come to find out, I had one buckle busted. I couldn't fix it at the moment. And then I had 2 buckles bust in the middle of the night with a windy, rainy night. And it sucked the rain fly off the tent and was only being held on by one. So it was going woo, woo, woo. Had to get out, get all my wet clothes on because now everything's getting soaked in my tent, and get out and try to somehow jerry rig the rain fly on. I had to use twisty zip ties and or twisty ties and zip ties and a bunch of stuff and poke holes through certain things on my little plastic things here. That's why they're sticking up, to hold the rain fly on enough to get me through the night to fix it more in the morning. I ended up just bagging and tagging the rain fly and packing up and heading back to my hometown. It ruined the whole trip because I could not stay out in the field and film more because I know I didn't have a rain fly and I had no option of how to fix it in the field. I didn't bring a sewing kit. So I ended up getting a sewing kit and then sewing the buckles back on, double stitching with heavy thread. Sewed the buckles back on, rain fly now attaches again, but it's still a point that failed miserably. I don't think there's anything else that's a con. I think I hit them all. I hope that gives you some insight on the pros and cons of this tent. This is a long-winded video. I apologize. I know some people are like, this is stupid. Well, it's a 1.5 year review. There's a lot to talk about. And for those who are really interested about what this tent does, this is invaluable information. I mean, you're saving yourself thousands of dollars if this is not what you are looking for. So on the pro side, if you're looking for a rooftop tent and you camp in mainly pristine conditions, this is a phenomenal rooftop tent. It handles its business, it gets it done. It's fast to set up and fast to put down. As long as the zippers work and as long as the buckle holds together, it's perfect. Everything else in the first review I did stands true. It has great material on it. But the stitching on certain spots, hence the buckles, are a problem. But the stitching on the rest of the tent are phenomenal. I've had no issues with the tent stitching anywhere else in the tent. Where the point of ingress of like water and the elements are coming from the little openings of the holes that are around the tent where it all zips together, and the zipper itself where the water drips in. Or if water starts pooling, it goes through the material that's not technically waterproof. So I can't hold that against them, but I do hold them against them in the design that allows water to come under the rain fly. You know, it's a giant living space. It's got a big bed, king size bed. It's comfortable bed, still comfortable. I have no problem with that, but it's not very warm when it comes to extreme temperatures. You know, if it gets into the 40s, it'll still be okay as long as you have a good sleeping bag. But I do feel as though I'm not as insulated as I should be with this aluminum base. It's absorbing a lot of the cold and it's coming up through the mattress. But it's comfortable. When the wind's not whipping like crazy, you feel very cozy inside of it. And you do have a lot of viewing space. Having those awnings and the ability to see out of your tent in the morning and the evening and see the sunset and see these amazing, you know, landscapes. It's beautiful. It's a fantastic experience, but please keep in mind, not meant for extreme situations. The Annex room, still phenomenal, still great. I don't like the fact that it's kind of hard to judge when you're not on perfectly level terrain. It takes a little bit of time to kind of level it to where you don't have these big gaps between the ground and the annex room where wind or weather can kind of whip underneath. And it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to set up sometimes, depending upon how dense the ground is, because you don't have spots to nail your guy lines or your stakes. But it still works well. It looks great as well. It's a really sexy setup, but once again, not designed for extreme weather. All the pros in the first video stand true. What I liked about it, how it sets up, what it does, all those stay true. But the things that fail on it take those away in a lot of ways. And so I don't know. I don't know how to state that. Let me sum up a year and a half of frustration and happiness using this tent in a few short sentences. The iKamper X cover, not designed for extreme weather. But if you're looking to have a rooftop tent for quick and easy setup and take down, for ideal situations for your weekend camping, it's kind of hard to beat. That's the best way to put it. But any number of things can fail on it at any point in time, and you'll be stuck up that creek without that particular paddle, and you'll be very frustrated. Is it worth the money? No, it's not. It's not worth the money. By no means stating that iKamper products are not worth buying. But in this particular product, these are the pros and cons. And it is what it is. Proof's in the pudding. I've gone through hell and back when it comes to being honest and being straightforward with my opinions. And it will never change. I will keep fighting those battles because I want to bring you 100% truth and facts when it comes to my reviews. Thanks for watching, guys. Thank you to those who might jump on board for Patreon. This is the type of review and these in-depth reviews I want to do. It just takes time and a lot of money and a lot of patience and a lot of frustration to go through, the pros and the cons of dealing with the product. So if you guys are able to, if you like the way I'm putting out videos, much more to come, especially as funding gets better, please jump on patreon.com/GY6Outdoors. Donate $1 a month. It's $12 a year. Thanks for those who are jumping on board with Patreon. Thanks for those who are about to. It means the world. Much more coming. A lot of reviews have been already filmed. I just got to get my butt behind my computer and sit down and edit for a lot of hours for each one and get them out to you guys for you guys to watch. Hope you enjoy. I'll see you soon. Later.